is Lieutenant Colonel David Shen, and welcome to another episode of doing the secure messaging data. In our last episode, what we did is that we prepared the file so that it would be ready to accept the data. You can see this is the one we worked on yesterday, the Air Force Weekly Running Totals, and see the one up at the top here, the Air Force Weekly 130505-0511. That's the data that just came in. And so what I'll do is I'll open this one first so you can see what it looks like. And see how all the what's this? Okay, all these things are in here, and this is probably what makes it so large. You can see all the different locations are shown, and actually there's other information here as well. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new tab over here so that we can actually work with it. And so what I'm going to do is to save it under another name so we don't mess up the original data file. So I just add this at the end there. And this way we can make changes and update it, and we don't have to worry about losing data from the original file that was sent to us. Okay, so now we can start playing around with this. Okay, so what we first do is that we want to copy all this data. As I copy it over, and I know that there's one additional column, and so we're going to go all the way down and pretty much copy everything. And see, you can see here that comes to these. This is that additional percentage data, and then I know there's about 3 extra lines down this way. And so we're going to go ahead and copy that, Control C, go over to our new area. I've been doing the paste special over here and clicking on the all using source theme. I'm not sure if it really helps anymore. It used to make a difference, but I think now it doesn't seem to make that much difference.
Why did you do that originally?
Originally, it would when they sent it to us, it would keep the layout in the original format.
Okay.
But as you notice, that this time when we pasted it, still everything came out with narrow columns and stuff. And I'm not sure why it did that, but that's what it's doing. So that's what we have here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and open up the Air Force Weekly Running Totals. This is where we put our data. This is what we prepared yesterday. And so I'll open this one. And so now we actually have two files open. And so I'm going to go all the way to the end here. And remember that we created this tab here to receive the data. So I'm going to go back over here. Let's see, coming down to the bottom, notice that there's this one that says REF, which means that there's something there that, see, that just for the sake of the data, I try to make the information copy. Notice that there's a formula here, so we can't just copy the formula, because that's probably why it has that REF sign. Maybe means that the reference, you can't find the link anymore. So it's 3827, and I just manually 3827 put that in here. Slide it over this one. That one just says 32%, so I just changed that one to 32%, and then just basically type it in. This one is actually based on something else. But if you notice that these two columns are the ones that have the totals, the number of invites sent, number of invites accepted. And So we're going to be using that information shortly, but now that we have this data here, and pretty much in the way we want it to look, I'm going to go ahead and copy this one more time. And Control C. This time we're jumping to the other one, and then copy, paste special. Probably doesn't make any difference, but just kind of doing this out of habit now. And you see, it didn't
Well,
help.
the one there with column width. Paste with column width.
Okay.
Next to paste special.
Yeah, but it's not that hard just to go through here, format, and then auto fit. So everyone will fit so that it's a perfect fit for the whole column. So now we see that we have that, and so now we can jump to this beginning here. And just, if you notice that I've been keeping this running total of the invites sent and the invites accepted. So what we can do is go back here. Here's the invite sent. And light this up here. Control C. Jump back to our running totals ones. See, then Control V. And this way you update this one. Then for the invites accepted. See, this row is the one that corresponds to the totals for this week's data. See, I come up here. This way I'm not trying to paste on top of that and changing the formatting of the cell. I'm just changing what's in the data that's in the cell. And so see, it calculates the 32% here also. So bring it back up here and get it ready to receive the data once it's prepared. Okay. So now we have all this stuff over here, and you notice that we don't want a lot of these names of providers. So what I'm doing is I'm highlighting all the rows. I'm actually running this thing along the row numbers here. I'm holding my button down on the mouse and getting right there because I don't want to mess with this part here. And then I can go up at the top, click on the data menu.
This is the original data that you received, right?
Right, but this is the new tab that we're working on. We're not messing with anything that's original.
But it has been pasted into the new tab.
Right, it's been pasted into this new tab, so now we can mess with it.
Okay.
So always try to be careful to not mess with the original stuff, just in case something happens, you accidentally delete something that you weren't supposed to delete. You can always go back to the original and recover it. And so I'm going to, so I can sort on row labels. If it doesn't do this, you can always make sure this box, my data, has headers up there, and it'll put the headers into these choices instead of just column A, B, and C, because you want the headers at the top. So I'm going to say OK, and you notice it just alphabetized everything for us. And of course, the ones we actually want are the ones that start with Air Force Medicine, and then a hyphen in the name of the base or clinic. And if you notice that everything that's not one of those is actually indented, so that kind of helps, even though for some reason it's still sorted, even though you have the space, or it's an indentation actually, it's not a space. So somehow the way that they set it up, the ones that we want are all the way to the left. The ones that we don't want are the indented ones. And so this is one of the longer processes here. I'm actually highlighting all the ones we don't want. So I highlighted that. So now if you want to, right-click, click delete, and that'll take out all those ones that we just highlighted. But what I'm going to do, instead of just doing one at a time or one section at a time, I'm going to use the control button. And see, I put the first one down here. But then now if I hold down my control button with my other hand, I can go and click the additional rows so that all the rows that I want can be deleted at the same time, as opposed to having to do, click and delete, click and delete. So I can try try to highlight all the rows. And notice I'm lighting up the entire rows. This way, when it deletes, all the contents of a given row stay together, as opposed to losing what's in just one cell and having everything shift over within that column. That'll throw off your numbers pretty badly. You see over here with Elmendorf, they also have a listed flight medicine. So you have to sort of carefully watch for which ones you're lighting up to delete, so we don't accidentally delete the other ones that we want to keep. Of course, if you get tired of doing this, you can always delete what you've done and then start up again. I'm not sure if it makes any difference, but see, when I'm using the scroll button on the mouse to scroll it upwards, and when I'm doing this, I'm letting go of the control button. Because I have a feeling that if I kept the control button down, it might actually do something to what we have here.
What it does is it will delete all what you've highlighted, because I've made that mistake before.
Okay.
You have to start all over again.
And this is where a shortcut might be if you
Right.
filtered
If you can filter the
On
stuff that's
everything
indents,
that contains first name.
or everything that contains the indentation. Because you notice that this, like row 142, we want to keep that one.
Right.
Row 143 includes it,
That's got the first name.
but it's indented, but it also has that term that says first name on it.
Right.
So
I mean,
my
that's-
hypothesis.
So how do you designate the filter term?
I'm not sure, but somebody who's had more experience may be able to tell you how to have it look for those things to remove them. I would almost
I can show you
suggest having
Okay.
it look for the indentation, because somehow the words in here
I
are
see.
sort of
Yeah,
indented. Yeah. Were you thinking about using the find and replace type of thing,
No,
or even like a find and remove?
Like properly filter everything and delete what you filter,
right.
and then leave what you want. So,
Might be an idea to try.
So you can
But
filter it.
Oh,
yeah,
You
you
know,
see,
yeah.
Yeah, he's done already.
yeah, see, I'm pretty much done here. So I'll go ahead and right-click and click delete.
Yeah.
And see that everything, of course, the highlights remain, and everything just shifts over for what
Right.
was going. So I can highlight, but you see it comes down here, and all these are the individual provider names. And since we know that there are no more clinics or MTFs there, we can just go ahead and work our way all the way down to the bottom. And I try not to remove these things at the bottom, just in case we might find them useful later. So I usually stop here, right-click, delete, and see now we have all the MTFs and clinics that we want. Okay, this one, sometimes it's, you don't have to do an auto column width fits again, but it's sort of nice to do it there. Okay, now the next part, I want to make sure we have the clinics that we want, and we can eliminate the clinics that we don't want. And sometimes this is also useful to check and see if any of the names have changed. Because sometimes if they change the name of a clinic, it may change the way it sorts when you do the alphabetical sorting. So I came over to the view menu. I use the range all, but you might be able to do a side by side. Range all, vertical, okay. And so on the right side, this is our fields that we actually have in our report, the file that we're going to use for our graphs. And on the left side, this is the data that we just received that we've been working on. Okay, and just like last time, what I try to do is just to go down and light up, for me it's easy just to remember 3 bases at a time. So, if you have better memory, you may see like Altus, Andrews, and Bowling. And you can see on the upper left corner, because I know if I let go of that, but on the upper left corner on the data fields, then you can see the 8R times 1C. You can't, well, it's, even if you point to in the upper left, but upper left corner. Yeah, but
You
that's,
counted 8, right?
yeah. So there's 8 of it. You see, it does show down here, and it was showing right in
Yeah,
this
it was
field
right
up
up
here.
here.
And just that we know that there's 8 of them. And so
Okay.
we can come back over here, you know, Altus and Andrews, and you notice that Beal shouldn't be there. We can get rid of Beal. So Altus, Andrews, Bowling, and again that's 8. Yeah, there was an 8R that was showing right here just a moment ago. When I let go of the mouse, it disappears, but you can see down here that there's also 8.
One thing you could also do is to show them exactly side by side, so you scroll
Yeah,
up.
well,
Are you
the very first one, this thing is so big that it can't
But you
work.
can still do an equivalency.
Mm,
You know, start Air Force Medicine Altus and make that Air Force Medicine Altus.
yeah, well, that's the idea, is that once you get past that first one, then you can line them up. And let's see, so Buckley, Cannon, and Charleston, there's 5. Buckley, Kent, Charleston, and you can, one thing you can do is you can look at the shape of the right border here and see if it compares to the shape of the right border over here.
But
I mean, just this, instead of having to read it specifically each one, and if you notice that the shape has changed, then you can look at the actual words to see if someone had modified the names. Because that had happened to me in one where it ended up with I think the flight medicine and the women's clinic ended up switching places. And one had a much larger enrollment, and that messed up their numbers on here. Didn't make that much difference in the overall graph since we combined everything on the graph, but just for keeping the data accurate, we had to go through, fix the names so that it matched the name of the data as it was coming in, and then resort the data so it graphed it properly. Okay, so Columbus, Davis-Monthan, and Dover. Columbus, Davis-Monthan, and Dover. Okay, Dyess, Eglin, Ellsworth at 7. Dyess. Let's see, Edwards shouldn't be there. That one's coming in later, but it's already starting to show up. Dyess, Eglin, and Ellsworth at 7. Okay, if you notice that they're able to nicely line up, and I'm doing this using the scroll wheel on the mouse here, and so I can just sort of count the clicks so that it ends up at about the same place as I can feel the clicks on the wheel as I'm turning it. Okay, Elmendorf, Fairchild, and Grand Forks. Elmendorf, Fairchild. Okay, see, there's an extra one here. So Elmendorf, Fairchild, Grand Forks. That's again 4. See, Hanscom, Hill, and Hurlburt. There's 6. See, Holloman shouldn't be there yet. So Hanscom, Hill, and Hurlburt is 6.
Hanscom is showing up because it started to have data.
Well, Hanscom was included earlier as one of the wave sites.
Okay.
And usually the people at Secure Messaging will include that base a few weeks ahead of time before they get their official training.
Okay.
Because in some cases they've had some preliminary online training, and they've created their base so that they can start getting all the numbers and start populating the provider names and stuff into their base. And so since they're not officially on the roster yet, because they haven't had their visit and in-person training by our MyCare, our Secure Messaging team.
How do you know when they're officially on?
Well, because we have that other file that lists the actual dates when they get their training. Yeah, I can show you that. Here, let's yesterday, the MyCare site activity and meeting. Yeah, this one. Let's see at the very right end, it actually shows you which. So Holloman was they started, or they had their final training on actually they just had it this week, so they won't officially be entered in until next week's data pool. Okay, so let's see, Kiesler, Kirtland, and Lackland, there's 10 of them there. Kiesler, Kirtland, and Lackland, still 10. You can see how the shapes are okay. Okay, Langley, Little Rock, and Luke, there's 7. Langley, Little Rock. See, there's 8 because Laughlin got added in, so I need to come here and remove Laughlin. They're still a little bit early. So Langley, Little Rock, and Luke, 7. Okay, McDill, Maxwell, McGuire, there's 8. McDill, Maxwell, yeah. Yeah, so whoever creates a program or macro or something to do this has to know to remove the ones that don't need to be in there just yet.
That's gonna be tough.
So there's a difference
Yeah,
in lists.
right. Then use the one that you created previously as the check to remove the ones that shouldn't be there yet. So Moody, Nellis, and Offit, there's 14 here. You notice that Mountain Home shouldn't be there. So Moody, Nellis, Offit, 14. Okay, Patrick, Pentagon, and Peterson. There, we know Patrick, Pentagon, Peterson. Okay, Randolph, Robbins, and Scott. There's 12 there. Randolph, Robbins, and Scott. There's 12. Okay, Seymour, Johnson, Shaw. Shepard and Tinker. They're all there. Travis, Tyndall, Academy, and Wright-Patterson. Okay, as you can see already, there's Vance is here that shouldn't be in here yet. Okay, so we got over here, there's 11 here. Travis up to Wright-Patterson, there's 11. So we're good now. So now we've removed the ones that shouldn't be there. So now we're ready to start actually bringing the data in. So the number of rows here should exactly match the number of rows in the one that we're working with. So I can actually come on down here, Control C, switch to the other one, click on there. That's where we want to start pasting it. Control V, paste it in there. And we can sort of eyeball it compared to the data that's right next to it, and to make sure that it should be growing. And you can see Dias, our newest base, has its data now. And so, like a quick way is to sort of look at the shape along the left border of these numbers here, and it looks about the same as you're going through. And also, when you get to the bottom, make sure that it did stop down here and it didn't go overlap or come short. Because there was a time when Wright-Patterson included about 4 of their clinics in their report, but for some reason Wright-Patterson decided not to actually list any of the enrollments within those clinics. They just kept everything as an MTF as a whole, and so for a couple months all those 4 clinics were all constantly zeros. And then one week they all disappeared. And so when I did that, I noticed that there was 4 extra spaces in the white section here. And after considering it for a while, we just went ahead and deleted those 4 clinics from Wright-Patterson since they were never used. Okay, and so I'm back up here and click on there, and so that this will be ready for next week now. When we start to prepare, next Friday when we prepare the spreadsheet again. So next one, unconnected total is here. And just as a clue to know which column to use, I wrote it down up here. The sum of total offline patients. So we jump back to, see it says sum of total offline patients, so this is the column we want. So Control C. Control V. That loads them up. Bring it down again, make sure everything looks okay. Then everything looks good. Move on to the next one. So the empanelments doesn't do anything, although the one that it does affect was the one for the Pentagon. And so you can actually show that the Pentagon did updates from those two that we just pasted in. So that one's good for next week. And notice I click it onto the next week's position, just as a reminder that I've already taken care of this. Okay, so total incoming message volume. This is the total incoming root messages from patients. Go over here. Total incoming root messages from patients. All the way down here. Control C. And it may seem a little bit obsessive compulsive at some times, but I just use this as a way to, as checks and balances, so that mistakes can be caught a little bit more easily. And so all those numbers, they're in, and you can see now that this column has been updated with its numbers. So I can click this onwards and know that I'm okay with that. So all these numbers updated, and even Dias, the newest one, should have its numbers in there. Okay, so next one, invite sent. And this is where we start chopping off a lot more data, because since there's a lot of in-between columns, what I can do is I can actually go
Hide all
and just, I just remove them and just delete them all. Because this is the one that we're working with anyways. And so in the future,
That's some of accepted?
this is invite sent.
Oh, sent, okay.
Yeah, so Control C. Go back over here, Control V. Yeah, see, this is sum of number of invites sent.
Okay.
That's the one we're using. And just in case you accidentally post it into the wrong spreadsheet, you can still kind of eyeball it and see if they're close enough to being what it was last time. Okay, and then finally, the invites accepted. See, sum of number of invites accepted. Come down here, Control C. Move to the next one, Control V, and it looks pretty good here. And click on there, and then just as a check here, you can see that it populated these columns here, and the data was filled in as it should be. This ones that divide by 0, these are clinics that are listed, but somehow they don't have that many, or for some reason they just don't have any data.
Yeah, the diabetes COE clinic just started again.
Yeah. So if they do start adding data, it'll start populating it.
Right.
And we click over here just to show that it's done. And just as a check, we go over here and see that. Remember how yesterday all of them went down to 0, and now that it's populated, these are filled up. And sometimes when you go there, you can see it'll suddenly jump. The dots will suddenly jump up to where it should be. But everything is tracking on properly. Although it's a good idea to eyeball these lines here. If anything starts going down, then we can actually go in and compare this week's data with last week's data for that particular MTF or clinic and try to find out what's
Column by column.
right. And well, usually what we do is we go to last week's data, and we can open this up on the far right tab, the next to the last tab that has last week's raw data, and we can use the raw data that they sent us this week, and then we can do a side-by-side comparison and find out if anybody, usually, yeah. Well, see, this one is Randolph. So in family health clinic, something funny happens.
Also in Randolph's.
Well, that's just the
total, right?
MTF as a total, but then the family
It's
health one
driven by
contributes
family
into
health.
that, right? But last week when we asked them, they said they were just doing corrections for
Right,
people
cleaning
that
up
we,
the-
yeah.
the database.
So I'd look at this anyways, just to be on the safe side. Yeah, see, these things are doing nice. Ellsworth, they're really doing well. Okay, this one's still climbing up here, and yeah, Dias is doing pretty well. And you notice that that the chart goes all the way up to 45%.
Right.
And I do that so that the appearance looks like the
compare-
other charts.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, you'll have the newer groups,
Right.
and they'll look really, really great, and then until you realize, maybe the top of the chart is only like 20%, whereas everybody else's was up to 45%. And so when if you need to do that, you can actually right-click, let's see, Format Axis, and see how I manually
Yeah,
did the
maximum.
the maximum on this axis at 0.45. So, in case you need to do that, that's how it's done. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this now, because this is saved the way we want it. And you can see how since it's so big with all that data, it takes a little while. And I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to go to the next to the last data over here, and okay, over here I'm going to go back to our raw data. And was that was Randolph that we were concerned about?
Was it? Yes. Yeah, it was.
So what I'm going to do is Control F, does a search, just type in Randolph, okay, and find it there. So there's Randolph's clinic. Jump over to this side, do the same thing. Remember, this is last week's data, not the present week's data. It's hard to do it tab to tab adjacent to each other. That's why it's nice to have both files open. Okay, so just so you remember, this is last week's data, view, and just do a side-by-side. Oops. Range all, vertical. Okay, that's the way we want it. So this one is from our weekly running totals. This is last week's data.
Right.
This one over here, come on, turn that off. Yeah, see, this, because of all this junk up here, you
Right.
can't really bring that up so much. But at least I can try to line them up a little bit. Let's see if there's anything. So this is last week, so you can compare name by name to see if anybody's missing. See, I'm going to Terry, Aaron. Try to stop there. Yeah, Tran Bao, Yang Yi, Clark, Cheryl, McGee, Ramp Management, Stutz, Kosmatka, Augustine. And we can see that everybody is there that's supposed to be there. And so I can probably conclude that it was probably the same issue that
Right.
was discovered last week. So if you notice that somebody's missing, you can check on how many patients there were and compare them week to week and see what happens. In this case, it doesn't seem to be an issue, so we'll just go ahead and jump back and sort of claim that everybody's okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So what I always do, since this one is the stuff that we finished working with save this one, so we have a saved
Okay, so now we have the
version.
final version.
Yeah, this is the final version of everything we were working with from the modified data.
Right.
And so that one is there for posterity, or in case we need to look at it in the future. I'll go ahead and close this one.
Ready for the KS.
Yeah, okay, so nice notice over, okay. Okay, so this is the one that says the mod one over there. Okay, actually this one probably, I'm going to need to do some manipulating later. Okay, okay, let's see what I have over here. This is like the running totals and ranks and stuff. This computer is set up so that it doesn't show the extensions on the files, but so that this one over here has a CSV at the end, and that's going to be useful here, because what we're going to do next is to create another file just to show the rankings of the connected percents. And so what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to go File, Save As, and instead of doing it this way, I'm going to change it to a CSV comma delimited file. And you notice it corresponds with this type, except I'm going to change the name so that it's for this week instead.
Good.
And so we'll save that. Okay, it's going to give us plenty of warnings, and we're okay with that. And so just to keep it clean and so we don't mess with our original file, I'm going to close this, don't save, because we already saved it. And see, this is the one we have here. I don't know. If I was showing it to you on my laptop, it would say .csv, so you know it's different. And I always like to arrange in this direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to open this one up. And it has all the data, all of our data in here. Okay, and so just so we don't mess with this, I'm going to do another save as. And this time we're going to put it back to being an Excel workbook. And we're going to have the ranks and give it the current week's name. And then save that. Okay. So we're going to need to create a new worksheet. This one is going to be for the MTFs. This one over here is going to be for the clinics. So what I'll do is I'll actually delete this information here. We don't. So okay. Well, actually, let's do it the other way. Just get rid of the columns we don't need. Since it goes up to week 67, what we'll do is we'll just we'll go up to week 65 then. And then right-click, delete those. And since we don't need anything beyond 67, we'll get rid of these columns. So we have these here. Now we can get rid of this data over here, and so it's a little bit cleaner. I'm going to stretch out column A so we can see what we're dealing with. Okay, now what I usually do is I deal with the MTFs first, and so I'm going to scroll down. You notice the ones that say total, those are the ones that look at the MTF as a whole. Okay, I'm going to get down to the last one there.
So you're going to do the ranking of the MTFs?
Yeah, so I'm going to Control C, copy this, jump over here. It's right here, just Control V, put that in there. And I'm going to get rid of all the clinics here since all I want is the MTFs.
So the only ones that have total?
Yeah, I had that word total there.
Okay.
And well, remember, those were the ones that were the blue ones in that previous, the other spreadsheet. So right-click, delete, and so now I have all of what I want, and this is just purely all the MTFs and their total percentages. And so what I'm going to do is light up this whole thing, data, sort.
Rank order.
And then I'm going to do it on the last week, because that's our current week. And I want the biggest ones on top, so I'm going to change this one to largest to smallest, whereas previously it was smallest to largest, and then say OK, and see, now we have the best ones at the top. And what I usually like to do, just to make it more
So now you can see the change in
yeah.
the rank across the
across,
past 3 weeks.
well, at least a couple weeks. And I usually go maybe roughly about 5 weeks at the most.
Oh.
And after that, I figure they're probably not that interested. And since we're over here, we go back to File. Oops, no, that's not what I wanted. How do I?
Home.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm going Home, Conditional Formatting, Color Scales, More Rules, and then I do the minimum. I just like to put red for minimum and then the green for maximum. Say OK, and see how it gives us a nice color scale. And you see dye is the newest one. We expect it to be still.
What are the cut points you established for red, green, and
I just do the whatever's the lowest is red, whatever's the highest is green,
okay.
and it automatically shades them in between.
Yeah, gradients.
Okay.
And then since we're dealing with this week, I usually light up the top 10. And you notice in the upper corner here, it had that 10. It was showing, let's see, 10R times 1C. So this way you know that you got 10. It also shows that you got 10 down here
Okay.
as a check. And see, now I can go back over here and deal with the clinics. Let's see. Oh, well, actually, one thing I like to do is to do the auto fit so that it looks nicer. Okay. So coming over here, since we don't need the totals for the MTFs, I'm going to find out where the last one is and cut out the entire rows for everything else, including all this other extraneous information here. Right-click, delete, so that everything's out there. So now we just have pure clinics. And so light up all these. You know, some of these do have that divide by 0 error message or error mark there, and that's going to affect it a little bit.
What is that? They had no data?
Right, those didn't have any data. So
Right.
again, week 67, since that's our currently largest to smallest, I said okay. Notice what happened here. All these things came up on top. But I don't want to delete these because these are still ones that we're dealing with. What we're going to do is I lit up the rows, right click, and then click on cut. And then I'm going to come way down to the bottom. This last one, right click, and see insert cut cells, and it just throws them into the bottom. Because if you highlight these and try the color coding, it'll mess up the color coding because it won't do it. So what I'll do is here, I just come right down to the last one that actually has close to
Those are the
0.
other ones you're gonna rank.
Yeah. So Home, Conditional Formatting, Color Scales, the More Rules. See the minimum one over here again. Color, I just put the red one. The maximum, the highest value,
It's green.
I do green. Oh, people like to think about things in that way.
Interpolates
Yeah.
the colors.
Yeah, so everything in between, it just shades it up until,
Yeah.
and then our most current one is there. And so Robbins is again at the top. There was one time I think Randolph switched places with him, but then now that Randolph is making its corrections, it's
Nice.
it's
Either
doing
way.
that. Yeah, and since we already gave it the proper name, we can save it and close it. See, so now we have the running totals and the rank ones. What I usually do is I like to have this one as the very last thing saved. It doesn't matter, but for me it helps to be able to find it next week or on Friday when it's time to update it. Since everything here is the way it's supposed to be, what I'll do is just to do something like adding a space and then removing the space. I always put it on the very last of the charts, and then click save that. Since you're saving it anew, assign the newer time to it, so that's why it's, like, I like to sort this on the date modified, and so these are the two things that get forwarded and sent. And then you take these two, post it into the shared drive, and then also remember what you're going to do is you're going to use whatever convention and add the change the file names in the shared drive, not here. I'm just showing you what you're going to do because we can't access the shared drives from here.
Right.
And so we would add the like a little time.
Yeah, you'd add the date.
Put that.
What is that? It's
year, month, day.
okay.
And this way, in case the date modified information gets changed, you can still sort it by name, and it'll still sort according to the date that it was. The date of the data.
Okay.
So, and then same thing here, and then you write the email and tell everybody where to find it on the shared drive. Okay, that should conclude our lesson for today. Okay, thank you for joining us, and hope we'll meet you the next time. Okay, now we turn it over to our host, Dr. Olani, to complete the recording.